boy helps a poor old lady push her cart, but she wasn't who he thought she was. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Nathan Davis sprinted down the hallway, his blue vest flapping against his thin frame as he dodged between students ambling toward their next classes. His brown hair, desperately in need of a trim, bounced with each frantic step. "Excuse me. Sorry. Coming through," he panted, narrowly avoiding a collision with a group of 6th graders. The clock on the wall showed 3:28 p.m., only 2 minutes before sign-ups closed for the Community Service Club. His heart hammered against his ribs, not just from the exertion, but from the anxiety that had been building all day. That morning, before leaving home, Nathan had stood in front of his mother's photograph on his bedside table. 3 years had passed since she died, but he still found himself talking to her picture when important decisions loomed. "Today's the day, Mom," he'd whispered, straightening his favorite blue vest, the one she'd bought him for his 9th birthday. "I'm going to join the Community Service Club and make you proud." What he hadn't told the photo was the other reason driving his determination. Lily Blackwell, with her perfect smile and kind eyes, was a member. And more importantly, her grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor Blackwell, was the club's primary benefactor and the most respected woman in town. Getting noticed by either of them could change everything. Nathan skidded around the final corner, nearly losing his balance as he spotted the sign-up sheet taped to the bulletin board outside room 118. A small crowd of students was dispersing, but the clipboard still hung there. He lunged forward, grabbing the pen dangling from a string, and scanned the list anxiously. 23 names. The club coordinator had announced they'd accept 25 students this semester. Relief flooded through him as he scrawled Nathan Davis in his neatest handwriting on line 24. "Just in time, Mr. Davis," came a voice behind him. Ms. Winters, the club coordinator, approached with a stack of papers. "I was about to take down the list." Nathan nodded, still catching his breath. "Thank you, Ms. Winters. I really wanted to join." "Well, I'm glad to see such enthusiasm." She handed him a packet. "Here's everything you need to know. We'll be focusing on elderly community service this semester. You'll need to document your hours with photos and testimonials. The students with the best service records will be honored at the fundraising gala next month." Nathan's pulse quickened again. The gala was notorious for being the social event of the season, with Mrs. Blackwell herself presenting awards to standout volunteers. "Mrs. Blackwell will be there?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course. It's her foundation that makes our club possible." Ms. Winters smiled. "First meeting is tomorrow after school. Don't be late like you were for sign-ups." During lunch, Nathan claimed a corner table with a perfect view of where Lily sat with her friends. While pretending to read the club packet, he observed her animated conversation, the way she tucked her dark hair behind her ear when she laughed. In his mind, he rehearsed a fantasy where Mrs. Blackwell called him to the stage at the gala, where he'd accept an award for his exceptional service, while Lily looked on admiringly. He flipped to a blank page in his notebook and began jotting down everything he knew about Mrs. Blackwell based on snippets he'd overheard from Lily's conversations. Prefers Earl Grey tea, supports 3 different arts foundations, sits on the hospital board, always dresses impeccably, values punctuality and proper manners. If he wanted to impress her, he'd need to study her preferences like a test subject. When the final bell rang, Nathan headed home to an empty house. A note on the refrigerator reminded him that his dad would be working a double shift again at the manufacturing plant. "Dinner in the fridge. Don't stay up too late. Love, Dad." Nathan heated up the leftover lasagna and ate alone at the kitchen table, reviewing his notes on Mrs. Blackwell and planning his strategy. He'd need to find elderly people to help, but not just any senior citizens. If he wanted to stand out, he needed to assist someone impressive, someone whose endorsement would catch Mrs. Blackwell's attention. The next afternoon, after stopping at the Community Service Club's first meeting, Nathan headed to Foster's supermarket. He'd heard Mrs. Blackwell shopped there on Thursdays for specialty items. Perhaps if he coincidentally offered to help her with her groceries, it would create the perfect opportunity to introduce himself. He wandered the aisles for almost half an hour before spotting an elderly woman struggling with a heavy shopping cart near the produce section. Her back was turned, but her elegant posture and silver-streaked hair seemed promising. Nathan quickly pulled out his phone, opening the camera app to document this perfect service opportunity. He practiced his most charming smile, already mentally composing how he'd recount this story at the next club meeting. "Let me help you with that, ma'am," he said brightly, stepping forward. The woman turned around and Nathan's smile faltered. This wasn't Mrs. Blackwell at all. Instead of the elegant socialite he'd hoped for, he faced a frail-looking elderly woman wearing simple, worn clothes and a gray headscarf covering most of her gray hair. Her hands were rough and wrinkled, marked by decades of hard work. Nothing about her suggested importance or influence. "Thank you very much, young man." "How kind of you," she said with a heavy Eastern European accent, her eyes crinkling with genuine appreciation. Nathan glanced around anxiously, checking if any classmates might witness him helping someone who clearly wouldn't boost his social standing. He hesitated, fingers still hovering over the camera button on his phone. For a moment, he considered making an excuse to leave. But something in the woman's gentle gaze stopped him. There was something oddly familiar about her eyes, something that reminded him of the way his mother used to look at him. "My name is Marta Kozlov," she said, extending a weathered hand. "And what is your name, kind boy?" "Nathan," he replied, reluctantly pocketing his phone. "Nathan Davis." "Davis," she repeated thoughtfully. "It is good name." Nathan found himself pushing her heavy cart toward the checkout line, helping her place items on the conveyor belt. He noticed her selections, basic supplies, nothing fancy, and several items on sale. When he helped her bag the groceries, she insisted on offering him a candy from an old tin decorated with faded flowers. "For my helper," she said firmly when he tried to decline. Nathan accepted the candy reluctantly, surprised by its unfamiliar but pleasant taste. Outside the store, as Nathan prepared to say goodbye, Marta looked up at the steep hill ahead with concern. "Is long walk home with heavy bags?" she said hesitantly. "Maybe, if not too much trouble, you could help old lady uphill. I worry about falling." Nathan checked his watch. His father wouldn't be home for another 2 hours, and he had finished his homework during study hall. Still, walking an old woman home wasn't exactly what he'd planned for his community service debut. "I guess I could," he sighed, picking up the heavier bags. As they walked slowly up the hill, Marta asked him questions about school and his family. Nathan gave brief answers, still disappointed by this unexpected turn of events. When they finally reached a small, modest house at the end of Maple Street, Nathan was surprised by what he saw inside as Marta invited him to set the groceries on her kitchen table. The house was simple, but immaculately clean. What caught his attention were the walls, covered with dozens of photographs in frames of various sizes and styles. Children of different ages smiled from every surface. "Are these all your family?" Nathan asked, momentarily forgetting his disappointment. No, Marta chuckled. "These are all neighborhood children I've known over the years, some now grown with children of their own." She moved toward a particular section of the wall and pointed to a faded photograph of a small smiling boy. "And this is you when you were only 4 years old." Nathan stared at the photo in shock. It was undeniably him, younger, with a missing front tooth, but unmistakably Nathan. Before he could process this revelation or ask how this was possible, his phone rang loudly in his pocket. He pulled it out to see Dad flashing on the screen. With a sense of dread, he answered, "Where are you?" His father's voice boomed through the speaker, vibrating with anger. "You were supposed to be home an hour ago. We've talked about this, Nathan. You always let me know if you're going to be late. I'm sorry, Dad, No excuses. If you're not home in 15 minutes, you can forget your allowance for the next month. Do you understand me? Nathan looked at Marta, who had busied herself with unpacking groceries, pretending not to hear the angry voice echoing from his phone. I understand, he said quietly into the phone, his mind racing with questions about the photograph that would have to wait. I'm on my way home now. Nathan walked home with his shoulders slumped, mind racing between the strange discovery at Marta's house and his father's anger. When he arrived, his explanation about staying late at the library felt hollow even to his own ears. His father's skeptical expression made it clear he wasn't convinced, but exhaustion from his double shift prevented further interrogation. Just don't let it happen again, his father said, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. And next time, answer your phone when I call. That night, Nathan lay awake staring at his ceiling, the image of his 4-year-old self hanging on Marta's wall, refusing to leave his mind. How did she have that photo? Why couldn't he remember her? The questions swirled until sleep finally claimed him. The next afternoon, Nathan joined the other club members as they were formally introduced to the residents of Sunny Pines Community Center. The facility was clean and pleasant enough, but hardly prestigious. Nathan scanned the room, assessing which seniors might be most beneficial to his goal. Ms. Winters paired them with residents, and Nathan found himself assigned to Mr. Peterson, a well-dressed man with perfectly combed white hair and an air of dignity. Perfect, Nathan thought, noticing the man's monogrammed handkerchief and polished shoes. This was someone whose recommendation might impress Mrs. Blackwell. Mr. Peterson was a professor of literature before retiring, Ms. Winters explained. He'd appreciate some help with reading the newspaper. His eyesight isn't what it used to be. Nathan smiled his most charming smile, pulling out his phone to document this picture-perfect service opportunity. He positioned himself at just the right angle, making sure his face and Mr. Peterson's were clearly visible as he held up the newspaper. My grandson can take a better photo than that, Mr. Peterson commented dryly. And he's only 7. Nathan's smile faltered, but he persisted, spending the next hour reading headlines and articles while secretly planning how he'd present this service at the next club meeting. Mrs. Blackwell would surely appreciate his dedication to a former academic. After leaving Sunny Pines, Nathan found himself standing outside Marta's small house, uncertain why he'd walked there instead of going home. He hesitated on the sidewalk, then tentatively approached and knocked softly on the door. Marta's face brightened when she saw him. Nathan, you come back to visit old lady. Come in, come in. Inside, Nathan noticed a loose hinge on a kitchen cabinet. That door looks like it's about to fall off, he observed. Yes, yes. Many things in old house need fixing, like old lady herself. Marta chuckled. You know how to fix? I think so. My dad taught me some basic repairs. Before he knew it, Nathan was on a step stool, screwdriver in hand, while Marta guided him through the repair. Her wrinkled hands occasionally steadied his, showing him exactly how to tighten the screws properly. Not so tight. You strip the wood. Gentle but firm, like holding baby bird, she instructed. When they finished, Marta made them both hot chocolate, and Nathan found himself asking about the photographs on her wall. I was nurse for 42 years, she explained, her accent thickening with emotion. Many of children in photos were my patients, some very sick, some just coming for checkups. I remember everyone. You were a nurse? Nathan asked, suddenly more interested. At which hospital? St. Mary's downtown, before they rebuild it. I work in many departments, but most time in pediatrics and later in oncology. Oncology? That's cancer, right? Marta nodded solemnly. Hard work, very sad sometimes, but also rewarding when we help someone. Nathan wanted to ask about the photo of himself, but was interrupted by the clock chiming. I should go. My dad will be home soon. At school the next day, Enthusiasm for the service club was building. During lunch, Ms. Winters gathered all members to make an important announcement. "I have exciting news," she said, eyes shining. "Mrs. Blackwell has decided to make this year's gala even more special. The 3 volunteers with the most impressive service records will be seated at Mrs. Blackwell's table during the event." A wave of excited murmurs swept through the group. Nathan's heart raced. A chance to sit with Mrs. Blackwell herself. That would be the perfect opportunity to make an impression, not to mention being seen in Lily's orbit. After the announcement, Nathan overheard Lily chatting with her friends. "Grandma says she's looking for volunteers who show initiative and understand the importance of meaningful connections," she explained. "Your grandmother is so inspirational," gushed one friend. "I've already started volunteering at Riverside Manor. You know, that luxury retirement home where Judge Wilson lives." Nathan silently revised his strategy. Maybe Mr. Peterson wasn't prestigious enough. He needed to aim higher. "What about you, Nathan?" Ms. Winters asked, catching him off guard. "You seemed to hit it off with Mr. Peterson yesterday, but you've also logged some additional hours already. What other service activities have you been doing?" All eyes turned to him. His mind raced to Marta's kitchen cabinet, not exactly the impressive service story he wanted to share. "I've been helping an elderly neighbor with some household repairs," he said vaguely. "Just small things." "That's wonderful. Be sure to document those activities for your portfolio." When Nathan returned home that afternoon, he found his father's toolbox in the hallway closet and secretly removed a wrench and screwdriver. The next day, he stopped by the neighbor's house to borrow a few additional supplies. "School project," he explained when Mr. Garcia questioned him about the unusual request for plumbing tape. That afternoon, Nathan returned to Marta's house to fix a leaky faucet. As he worked, she told stories about her years as a nurse, describing the hospital before its modernization and the many doctors she had worked with. "Some doctors very good, very kind. Others," she made a dismissive gesture, "too important in their own minds to see patients as people." Nathan found himself surprisingly engaged, asking questions about treatments and procedures that would have bored him a week ago. There was something soothing about Marta's presence, something that reminded him of quiet evenings with his mother before she got sick. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. Nathan would attend school and participate in the club's official activities at Sunny Pines, documenting everything meticulously for his portfolio. Then, several afternoons a week, he would visit Marta, fixing small things around her house and listening to her stories. Yet he kept these visits secret, never mentioning Marta during club meetings or to his father. When classmates asked about his additional service hours, he spoke vaguely about elderly neighbors without specifics. The thought of admitting he was spending time with someone as ordinary as Marta felt uncomfortable. What would someone like Lily or Mrs. Blackwell think of his helping a simple former nurse with an accent and worn clothing? As the gala approached, competition among club members intensified. Nathan noticed his father eyeing him suspiciously as he left the house with a hammer one afternoon. "What's with all the home repairs lately?" his father asked. "And whose tools are you borrowing? Those aren't mine." "It's for the service club," Nathan replied, not meeting his father's eyes. "We help seniors with household tasks." His father nodded slowly, clearly not entirely satisfied with the explanation. After Nathan left, he opened his son's backpack, finding odd items: plumbing tape, a small can of paint, and notes about fixing a squeaky floorboard. His brow furrowed with concern. That same afternoon, Nathan arrived at Marta's house to find her sorting through old photographs in a worn album. "Come, sit." She patted the couch beside her. "I find old pictures from hospital. Many memories here." Nathan settled beside her, genuinely interested in seeing where she had worked. He turned pages carefully, noting how young Marta looked in her crisp white nurse's uniform. Halfway through the album, A particular photograph made him freeze. There, in a hospital bed, was a thin woman with kind eyes that matched his own. Beside her stood Marta, younger but unmistakable, her arms supportive around the woman's shoulders. That's my mom," Nathan whispered, his voice cracking. Marta nodded softly. "Yes, beautiful Sarah. I was her nurse during last month's." Nathan stared at the photo, emotions swirling chaotically. "You took care of my mom when she was sick?" "For almost 5 months. You were very small then, staying with your aunt while your father worked. He would bring you to visit on weekends." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Nathan demanded, suddenly angry and confused. "The first day at your house, you showed me my picture but didn't say anything about my mom." Marta looked genuinely surprised. "I thought you knew. Your mother, she'd talk about me sometimes?" Nathan shook his head, fighting tears. "I was only 9 when she died. I don't remember everything." "Your mother was very brave," Marta said softly, tears gathering in her own eyes. "She'd talk about you every day, always your picture by her bed, always asking your father how you doing in school, even on her worst days." Nathan stood abruptly, unable to process this flood of unexpected information. "I have to go," he said, backing toward the door. "Nathan, wait." But he was already rushing out, nearly stumbling down the porch steps. He ran blindly down the sidewalk, tears blurring his vision, until he collided with someone. Strong hands steadied him. "Whoa, buddy! Watch where you're—" "Nathan." Nathan looked up into his father's stunned face. "Dad, what are you doing here?" His father's expression hardened as he looked from Nathan to Marta's house behind him. "I think the better question is, what are you doing here? Who lives in that house? And why have you been lying about where you're spending your afternoons?" "I haven't been lying. I've been helping an elderly woman with house repairs, just like I said." "You said it was for your club. Ms. Winters called today asking why you've missed the last 2 Sunny Pines visits, so I decided to follow you and see what's really going on." "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. You've been sneaking around, lying about your whereabouts, and apparently spending time with strangers." "She's not a stranger," Nathan shouted, frustration and confusion boiling over. "She took care of Mom. She was Mom's nurse." His father's anger dissolved into shock, his face paling dramatically. "What did you say?" "Her name is Marta. She was Mom's nurse at St. Mary's." His father looked past Nathan to the modest house, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Marta, Nurse Marta," he whispered as if seeing a ghost. Before either could speak again, Nathan's phone rang sharply. The screen displayed Ms. Winters' name. With trembling fingers, he answered, "Nathan? Good news. Mrs. Blackwell has specifically requested to see the community service work you've been doing. She's very interested in meeting the elderly people you've been helping. We need your complete documentation by tomorrow for the final selection." Nathan's eyes darted between his father's stunned face and Marta's house, knowing he faced an impossible choice: continue hiding his friendship with Marta to maintain his chances of impressing Lily and her grandmother, or admit the truth and likely lose the recognition he so desperately wanted. "Why didn't you tell me that you knew her?" he asked his father. Pensively, she thought you knew. Your father used to visit me with you when you were little. He's the one who took that picture of you on the wall. The week before the fundraising gala was a nightmare for Nathan. After their confrontation on the sidewalk, his father had insisted they go back to Marta's house together. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable hours of Nathan's life. "I can't believe it's really you," his father had said, embracing Marta with unexpected emotion. "After Sarah passed, I couldn't." "Is okay, Mr. Davis," Marta had replied gently. "Grief makes us do strange things." Sitting stiffly on Marta's faded couch, Nathan learned the full story. Marta hadn't been just any nurse. She had been his mother's primary caregiver during her final months. She had stayed late without charging overtime, brought homemade soup when hospital food became unpalatable, and even babysat Nathan occasionally when his father needed to handle insurance paperwork. She refused any extra payment, his father explained, his voice thick. Said it was her honor to help our family. The revelation crushed Nathan with guilt. He had initially helped Marta for all the wrong reasons, seeing her only as a means to gain recognition. Now, learning how much she had done for his family when they needed it most, he could barely look her in the eye. "Why didn't you ever mention her?" Nathan asked his father on their silent walk home. His father stared straight ahead. "After your mom died, I wanted to move forward. Seeing Marta, it brought back the hospital, the illness, everything I was trying to protect you from remembering." That night, Nathan tossed and turned, Ms. Winter's words echoing in his mind. Mrs. Blackwell wanted to see his community service work, specifically the elderly people he'd been helping. How could he possibly present Marta as his project now? The thought of exploiting her genuine kindness for social advancement made him feel physically ill. At school the next day, the situation worsened. Ms. Winters called him aside during lunch. "I have the final selection for the 3 students who'll be seated at Mrs. Blackwell's table," she said, smiling apologetically. "I'm sorry, Nathan, but you weren't chosen." His heart sank. "But Mrs. Blackwell asked about my work yesterday?" "She did, and your documentation was thorough, but—" Ms. Winters hesitated. "Compared to the others, your work seemed less impactful. Lily's project at Riverside Manor, for instance, involved organizing an art therapy program for former business leaders and a retired judge." As if summoned by her name, Lily appeared beside them, her perfect ponytail swinging. "Ms. Winters, Grandma asked if we could finalize the seating chart today." Ms. Winters nodded. "I'll be right there, Lily." When she left, Lily turned to Nathan with what seemed like genuine sympathy. "I heard you didn't make the top 3. That's too bad." Nathan shrugged, attempting nonchalance. "It's fine. Maybe if you'd helped people who were really important, like Grandma suggested, you might have had a better chance," Lily said casually. "Grandma always says that understanding the importance of the right connections is a valuable life lesson." She paused, then continued in a lower voice. "Between us, Grandma spends a lot of time looking at who volunteers where. The right service work can open doors. Colleges notice that sort of thing." Nathan watched her walk away, her words settling like stones in his stomach. All this time, he'd been thinking exactly like Lily, calculating the value of people based on what they could do for him. The realization made him feel hollow. That evening, his father tried to console him. "It's just a seat at a table, Nathan. It doesn't define your worth." "I know," Nathan mumbled, pushing food around his plate. His father set down his fork. "I've been thinking we should invite Marta for dinner, as a thank you for everything she did for our family." Nathan looked up, surprised. "You want to take her out?" "Yes, it's long overdue." His father's eyes held a mixture of guilt and resolve. "I should have kept in touch with her after your mother passed. She was there for us when we needed someone most." Reluctantly, Nathan agreed. The dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at Angelo's, the nicest restaurant Nathan's father could afford, on his factory salary. Marta arrived dressed in her best outfit, a simple blue dress that had clearly been carefully preserved for special occasions. Throughout the meal, she shared more stories about her past, how she had immigrated as a young woman, worked in various hospitals, and dedicated her life to caring for strangers. "Never had children of my own," she explained, "but cared for many sick children as if they were mine." Her eyes twinkled as she added, "Some like you, Nathan. I remember even years later." Nathan realized the photographs in her house weren't just decorations. They were testament to a life devoted to others. While he'd been calculating how people could advance his social standing, Marta had spent decades giving without expectation of return. "Did you always want to be a nurse?" he asked, genuinely curious now. "Not always. In old country, I dream of being doctor. But when I come here, no money for medical school." She smiled without bitterness. "So I become next best thing, good nurse." The following day, the formal invitation to the fundraising gala arrived in Nathan's mailbox. Even though he wasn't selected as one of the featured volunteers, all club members were expected to attend and help with the event's organization. Nathan pulled his only suit from the back of his closet, the one he'd worn to his cousin's wedding last year. It was slightly too short at the wrists now, but it would have to do. His father offered to iron his shirt, a task he'd taken over after Nathan's mother died. "You'll do fine," his father reassured him, noticing his nervous expression. "Remember, you did good work with Marta, regardless of whether you get recognition for it." Nathan nodded, though his father's words provided little comfort. He still felt the sting of rejection, mixed with shame at his own motivations. When he arrived at the venue, the grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel, Nathan was immediately directed to help arrange chairs and distribute programs. From this position, he had a perfect view of the entrance, where Mrs. Blackwell would soon make her appearance. Right on schedule, she arrived, elegant in a navy blue dress with a single strand of pearls. Nathan had seen her in photographs, but in person she was even more impressive. Tall, slender, with silver hair swept into a perfect French twist. She moved through the room like royalty, stopping to speak with select students and parents. When she passed by Nathan, she offered only a vague nod, clearly not recognizing him. The ache in his chest intensified. All his scheming and planning had amounted to nothing. Mrs. Blackwell had no idea who he was, despite his weeks of calculated effort. As the event progressed, Nathan continued with his assigned tasks, watching from the periphery as important community members arrived. His father slipped in later, taking a seat near the back, offering an encouraging thumbs up that only made Nathan feel worse. The formal program began with the principal's introduction, followed by Ms. Winters detailing the club's achievements. Then came the moment Nathan had once anticipated eagerly, the recognition of top volunteers. Please welcome to the stage our three outstanding service leaders, Lily Blackwell, Jason Chen, and Emma Rodriguez. Enthusiastic applause filled the ballroom as the three students took their places on stage. Lily, poised and confident, stepped to the microphone first. "My project at Riverside Manor allowed me to connect with distinguished former professionals," she began, describing her transformative work with respected elders of the community. Nathan felt a complex mixture of emotions, envy, disappointment, but also something new. As he watched Lily describe her carefully curated service work, designed perfectly to impress the right people, he felt oddly hollow. Was this really what he had aspired to become? He thought of Marta's weathered hands guiding his as they fixed the kitchen faucet. He remembered her stories of midnight shifts at the hospital, of holding strangers' hands during their most vulnerable moments. He recalled the photograph of his mother in the album, Marta's arms supportive around her shoulders. The principal returned to the microphone. "Now, we'd like to give other volunteers an opportunity to briefly share their experiences. Would anyone like to speak about their service work?" Without fully realizing what he was doing, Nathan raised his hand. Several heads turned in surprise as he made his way to the stage. His legs felt wobbly as he approached the microphone, his prepared speech about Mr. Peterson completely forgotten. I'd like to talk about someone who changed my life recently," he began, his voice trembling slightly. He glanced out at the audience, spotting his father in the back row, his expression a mixture of surprise and concern. Nathan took a deep breath and made a decision that he knew would change everything. As he stood behind the microphone, Nathan's eyes met Lily's, who had taken a seat in the front row next to her grandmother. The look of polite disinterest on both their faces strengthened his resolve. This person doesn't live in a luxury retirement home, he continued, his voice growing stronger. She lives in a simple house, wears worn clothes, and has hands calloused from years of caring for others. Her name is Marta Kozlov. A murmur rippled through the auditorium as Nathan continued his impromptu speech. From his position at the microphone, he could see Lily's face contorting with disapproval, while Ms. Winters made frantic gestures from the side of the stage, silently urging him to wrap it up quickly. Marta took care of my mother when she was dying, Nathan revealed, his voice catching slightly. And I helped her initially only because I thought she was someone else, someone I considered more important. The room fell completely silent. Nathan could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears as hundreds of eyes focused solely on him. He swallowed hard and pressed on. I found Marta struggling with her groceries at Foster's supermarket. At first I was excited because I thought she was Mrs. Blackwell from behind. Nathan glanced nervously at the elegant woman in the front row, whose expression remained unreadable. I had my phone ready to take a picture for my service portfolio, but when she turned around and I saw she was just an ordinary elderly woman with an accent and worn clothes, I almost walked away. In the back row, Nathan's father straightened in his seat, his face a mixture of surprise and something that might have been pride. The thing is, Nathan continued, I didn't document my visits to Marta for the club because I was embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to see me helping someone so simple. I thought it wouldn't count as much as helping someone prestigious. He looked down at his two short suit sleeves, suddenly aware of how shallow his thinking had been. But I discovered that Marta is the most important person I've ever met. She spent 42 years as a nurse, caring for countless patients, including my mother during her final months. She taught me that real service isn't what we do to be seen or recognized. It's what we do because it's right. Nathan took a deep breath, preparing for the backlash he expected, the disapproving looks, maybe even ridicule. So I didn't make the top 3 volunteers, and that's okay, because Marta taught me something more valuable than any award. When he finished, the room remained eerily quiet. Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he stepped away from the microphone, his face burning with embarrassment. He'd effectively ended any chance of impressing Lily or her grandmother, but strangely, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. Before he could leave the stage, however, movement in the front row caught his attention. Mrs. Eleanor Blackwell was slowly rising from her seat, her pearl necklace catching the light as she made her way deliberately toward the stairs leading to the platform. Nathan froze, uncertain whether he should retreat or remain where he stood. Around him, everyone seemed equally confused by this unexpected development. Mrs. Blackwell took the microphone, her posture impeccable as she surveyed the audience. "Young man," she said, her voice surprisingly warm, "you have just demonstrated more wisdom than many adults I know." She turned to address the stunned audience. "Marta Kozlov and I have known each other for more than 40 years. It was she who taught me, when I was an arrogant young volunteer, that a person's true value has nothing to do with their bank account or social status." Gasps and whispers erupted throughout the room. Nathan stared at Mrs. Blackwell in complete disbelief. How could these two women, one draped in pearls and designer clothing, the other in worn dresses with rough hands, possibly know each other? "Marta and I met at St. Mary's Hospital in 1981, Mrs. Blackwell continued. "My mother was dying of the same illness that later took your mother, Nathan. As a young, privileged woman, I was impatient with the hospital staff, demanding special treatment and private rooms. Marta was the only nurse who had the courage to tell me that my mother would receive the same compassionate care as every other patient. No more, no less." The revelation left everyone speechless, especially Nathan. Mrs. Blackwell explained that it was she who had secretly asked Ms. Winters to observe how Nathan behaved outside of school, not just in official activities. "I wanted to see if anyone would show genuine kindness to Marta, without knowing of our connection," she explained. Every year I test the service club members this way. Most gravitate toward the important people, the ones with obvious connections or influence. Very few recognize the value in helping someone like Marta, someone who has given so much without seeking recognition. Nathan's mind raced, trying to process this unexpected twist. Had this all been some kind of test? Had Mrs. Blackwell been watching him all along? Just then, the double doors at the back of the auditorium swung open. Nathan's eyes widened as he saw Marta enter, guided by his father. She wore her blue dress from their dinner and a simple gray headscarf, looking simultaneously out of place and perfectly at ease in the elegant surroundings. Nathan watched in amazement as Mrs. Blackwell descended from the stage and met Marta halfway down the center aisle. The two elderly women embraced like old friends, creating a striking tableau, one in expensive navy silk, the other in a modest blue dress, yet somehow equals in the moment. "Eleanor always making dramatic entrance," Marta said with a chuckle that carried through the silent room. Mrs. Blackwell laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise many in the audience who knew her only as a serious philanthropist. 40 years, and you still scold me like I'm 25. She guided Marta toward the stage, where Nathan still stood, frozen in confusion. His father had slipped into an aisle seat, watching the scene unfold with evident emotion. "Your father called me," Marta explained when she reached Nathan. "Said you were making speech about old nurse. Could not miss this." Mrs. Blackwell returned to the microphone, her arm linked with Marta's. "I am doubling my annual contribution to the service club," she announced, "with one condition: that the focus shifts to genuine service, not recognition. And I would like Marta Kozlov to serve as an honorary advisor to help teach what true service means." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Whether from genuine agreement or simply because it came from Mrs. Blackwell was hard to determine. Nathan noticed Lily's expression had shifted from disdain to something more complicated. Confusion, certainly, but also a hint of respect as she watched her grandmother's arm linked with Marta's. After the formal program concluded, Nathan found himself surrounded by curious classmates, all suddenly interested in Marta and her connection to Mrs. Blackwell. He answered questions mechanically, still processing the evening's unexpected turn of events. "You should have told me who your elderly friend was," Jason Chen whispered. "I would have helped her too if I'd known she was friends with Mrs. Blackwell." "That's the point," Nathan replied, surprising himself with his own certainty. "We should help people because they need it, not because of who they know." Later, as the crowd thinned, Nathan found himself in a quiet corner with Marta, his father, and Mrs. Blackwell. "I don't understand," he admitted. "If you two are friends, why does Marta live so simply?" He blushed, realizing how the question sounded. Mrs. Blackwell smiled. "Because Marta is the most stubborn woman I've ever met. I've offered her everything from a nicer house to a full-time housekeeper. She accepts nothing." Marta shrugged unapologetically. "I need simple life. Always have. Eleanor knows this, but still tries every Christmas to buy me fancy things. Last year it was a dishwasher," Mrs. Blackwell said, rolling her eyes fondly. "She returned it and donated the money to the children's ward at St. Mary's." Nathan's father cleared his throat. "I should have kept in touch after Sarah died. I'm sorry, Marta." "No apologies needed," Marta replied gently. "Grief is heavy burden. But now we reconnect, yes? And your son, he is good boy, smart boy." In the months that followed, Nathan and Marta became regular fixtures at the service club. She shared her nursing expertise with students interested in medical careers, while he organized visits to elderly neighbors who lived alone. Their first project involved recording life stories of seniors in the community, creating an oral history archive for the local library. Initially, some students, particularly those from wealthy families, seemed reluctant to work with someone as ordinary-looking as Marta, but her straightforward manner and genuine warmth gradually won them over. Even Lily, after some initial resentment, eventually joined their projects. "Grandma talks about Marta all the time now," she confided to Nathan one afternoon as they sorted donated medical supplies. Apparently, she's been secretly funding a nursing scholarship in Marta's name for years, but Marta wouldn't let her tell anyone. Nathan discovered that helping others without calculating the personal benefit brought a different kind of satisfaction, one his mother would have understood. His father, too, seemed transformed by reconnecting with Marta, occasionally joining their service projects on his days off. Years later, at Nathan's college graduation, a photograph held a place of honor in his dorm room. In it, a boy in a blue vest smiled between two elderly women, one elegantly dressed, the other wearing a simple gray headscarf. As he walked across the stage to receive his medical school acceptance letter, Nathan dedicated his achievement to his mother's memory and to Marta, who taught me that the most meaningful acts are those done without expecting anything in return. In the audience, his father applauded proudly, seated beside Marta, now with completely white hair but with the same gentle gaze that had reminded Nathan of his mother years before. At the celebration dinner afterward, when one of his professors asked what had inspired him to pursue medicine, Nathan smiled and answered, "I learned early on that sometimes you need to look beyond the blue vest to find someone's true value, especially your own." Nathan observed the changes in Lily's demeanor as they passed each other in the school hallways. Her usual confident stride had given way to something more hesitant, and her eyes, once dismissive when they landed on him, now held a curious glimmer. 3 days had passed since the gala, and the school was still buzzing with whispers about the surprising connection between Mrs. Blackwell and the immigrant nurse from the old neighborhood. During Thursday's service club meeting, the energy had shifted noticeably. Ms. Winters stood before them with renewed enthusiasm, her clipboard clutched tightly to her chest. "Mrs. Blackwell was deeply moved by what happened at the gala," she announced, scanning the room. "She feels we need to refocus our mission on genuine service rather than recognition." Her eyes landed briefly on Nathan. "And she specifically suggested we invite Marta Kozlov to share her experiences as a healthcare worker with the group." Several students exchanged uncertain glances. The mention of Marta, no longer an unknown elderly woman but someone with a mysterious connection to their benefactor, sparked undeniable interest. Nathan raised his hand. "I can ask her if she'd be willing to come to our next meeting." "Excellent," Ms. Winters replied with a warm smile. "I think we all have something to learn from her perspective." That evening, Nathan's father arrived home earlier than usual, his work boots still on as he entered the kitchen where Nathan sat doing homework. "I switched shifts with Mike," he explained, hanging his jacket on the hook by the door. "Thought I might help you with that plan you mentioned, mapping out which seniors in the neighborhood might need regular visits." Nathan looked up in surprise. His father hadn't been involved in any of his school projects since his mother's death. "Really? That would be great." They spread a neighborhood map across the kitchen table, marking the homes of elderly residents Nathan remembered seeing. His father added several names Nathan hadn't known about. "Mrs. Finley on Oak Street uses an oxygen tank," his father noted, marking the location. "And Mr. Gaines on Maple has trouble with his vision. Probably can't read his mail easily." "How do you know all these people?" Nathan asked. His father's expression softened. "Your mom kept track of all the neighbors who might need help. After she got sick, I tried to continue checking on them for a while, but then..." He trailed off, the unspoken weight of grief hanging between them. The next afternoon, Nathan and his father visited Marta to ask if she would speak to the service club. Her small living room felt warmer somehow, now that Nathan understood the memories it contained. "Of course I will come," Marta agreed readily. "Young people should know that service is not just for resume, is for soul." She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a small photo album bound in faded red leather. "Look here," she said, pointing to a yellowed photograph. "This is Eleanor when we first meet." Nathan and his father leaned forward. The image showed a much younger Mrs. Blackwell, recognizable by her perfect posture even then, standing alongside Marta in a hospital corridor. Both wore volunteer badges, though Marta also had a nurse's cap. She was so serious, this one. Marta chuckled. Always clipboard, always checking boxes. Very proper, very rich girl doing charity because her school require it. "That doesn't sound like the Mrs. Blackwell I met," Nathan remarked. "People change," Marta said simply. "Eleanor's mother come to hospital with cancer. Very bad diagnosis. Eleanor expects special treatment because her father donate wing to hospital. I tell her, in sickness everyone equal." "You actually said that to Mrs. Blackwell?" Nathan couldn't imagine anyone speaking so bluntly to the imposing woman. She was not Mrs. Blackwell then, just Eleanor Hammond, angry, scared girl watching mother die. Marta turned another page in the album, revealing more photos of the unlikely pair volunteering together. After her mother pass, she keep coming back to hospital. Not for school credit anymore. Something changed in her heart. Nathan's father cleared his throat. "Why didn't you ever tell me she was your friend? All those years you cared for Sarah." Marta shrugged. "Eleanor and I, we have different lives. She become important society lady, marry Mr. Blackwell, join hospital board. I stay nurse. We still friends, but private. She respects that I want simple life." "Did you know she was testing the students in our club?" Nathan asked, still processing this revelation. This I learned only recently," Marta admitted. "She called me last month, asked if I mind being part of her, what she call it, character assessment." She smiled wryly. "She always looking for young people who see beyond surface. Said too many volunteers these days only help people who look important." Later that week, Nathan was studying in the school library when he felt someone watching him. Looking up, he found Lily Blackwell standing uncertainly between the bookshelves, clutching her backpack strap. "Can I sit?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Nathan nodded, surprised by her initiative. Lily settled into the chair, carefully arranging her books before speaking. "My grandmother has been talking about your friend Marta non-stop since the gala." She hesitated. "She seems, interesting." "She is," Nathan replied, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Grandma said she refused a dishwasher last Christmas," Lily continued, her brow furrowed as if this concept was completely foreign to her. "Who refuses a dishwasher?" Nathan couldn't help but smile. "Marta doesn't believe in having things she doesn't need. She says unnecessary luxuries complicate life." "That's," Lily paused, searching for words, "different from how I was raised." "I'd imagine so. Could I—" Lily looked down at her perfectly manicured nails, then back up at Nathan. "Could I maybe meet her sometime? Grandma says I should hear her stories directly." The following afternoon found Nathan and Lily walking side by side toward Marta's neighborhood. Lily's designer sneakers and cashmere sweater stood out starkly against the modest surroundings. Nathan noticed her glancing nervously at a group of children playing on a dilapidated playground. "It's perfectly safe here," he assured her. "I've been walking to Marta's house for weeks." "I've just never been to this part of town," Lily admitted, clutching her purse a little tighter. When they arrived at Marta's house, the elderly woman's face lit up at the sight of Lily. Come in. Eleanor's granddaughter, yes? You have her eyes. Same eyes she had when young." Lily blinked in surprise, clearly unaccustomed to being compared to a younger version of her formidable grandmother. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Kozloff." "Just Marta, please. Mrs. Kozloff make me sound like old woman," she winked, leading them into the living room, where tea and cookies already waited on the coffee table. "My grandmother said you two met at the hospital," Lily began cautiously after they were seated. Yes. She was volunteer, very proper, very..." Marta mimicked a stiff posture and haughty expression that made Nathan choke on his tea with laughter. Even Lily couldn't suppress a smile. "Grandma? Really? Oh yes, very different person then, but good heart underneath fancy clothes. Just needed someone to, how you say, call her bluff?" Marta retrieved the photo album and showed Lily the picture of her grandmother as a young volunteer. Lily stared at it in fascination. "I can't believe this is her," she marveled. "She looks so uncertain." "Everyone uncertain when young," Marta replied wisely. "Even Eleanor Blackwell." By the time they left, Lily's earlier discomfort had noticeably diminished. On their walk back, she seemed lost in thought. "You okay?" Nathan asked. "It's just strange," she replied, "seeing my grandmother through someone else's eyes. All my life, she's been this perfect, untouchable figure that everyone respects and maybe fears a little. But Marta talks about her like she's just a regular person who made mistakes and learned from them." At the next service club meeting, Marta's presentation captivated even the most reluctant students. She shared stories of patients she had cared for, famous and ordinary alike, emphasizing how illness erased social distinctions. "Famous movie star cry same tears as janitor when cancer diagnosis come," she told them. "Rich man feel same fear as poor man when heart attack happen. In hospital we see true humanity. No masks, no pretending." Following her talk, interest in the club surged. When Nathan and Lily proposed expanding their service efforts to include seniors from diverse backgrounds, the idea received enthusiastic support. That weekend, Nathan's father arrived home with unexpected news. "I spoke with my supervisor," he announced during dinner. "I've arranged to cut back one of my shifts permanently. It's time I was more present for you." Nathan put down his fork, stunned. "But what about the bills? You always said we needed the overtime." "We'll manage," his father replied firmly. "Some things are more important than money. Seeing you with Marta, hearing about Sarah again, it reminded me what really matters." The following Sunday afternoon brought an unexpected gathering. Nathan and his father hosted Marta and Mrs. Blackwell for tea. The contrast between the two elderly women might have seemed comical. Mrs. Blackwell in her tailored pantsuit and Marta in her simple dress. But their easy companionship transcended these superficial differences. "Your mother would be proud of you, Nathan," Mrs. Blackwell remarked as they shared old photographs. "She had the same genuine spirit Marta recognized in you." "Eleanor became volunteer because school require community service hours," Marta explained, nudging her friend playfully. "But she stay volunteer because she learned what service really mean when her mother was my patient. Marta taught me that true compassion isn't about being seen doing good things," Mrs. Blackwell added. "It's about doing them, even when, especially when, no one is watching." Over the next weeks, Nathan and Lily spent increasing amounts of time together, planning a project to document the life stories of neighborhood seniors. Their proposal to create an oral history archive received special notice from the club coordinator. "Mrs. Blackwell called personally," Ms. Winters informed them after class. "The Blackwell Foundation wants to provide special funding for your Beyond Appearances project. She believes it has the potential to bridge important divides in our community." Later that day, Nathan and Lily visited both the luxury retirement community, where she had previously volunteered, and the modest senior center near Marta's neighborhood. The contrast was stark: plush carpets and gourmet meals at one, linoleum floors and simple lunches at the other. Yet they found equally compelling stories in both places. "I always thought importance came from who you know, not what you do," Lily confessed as they walked home. "That's how I was raised. My parents are always talking about connections and networks and leveraging relationships." "And now?" Nathan prompted. Lily smiled thoughtfully. "Now I'm not so sure. Marta seems to have lived a fulfilled life without any of that." As they left the final club meeting of the week, focused on their expanding project, Nathan and Lily were surprised to find a small group of reporters waiting at the school entrance. "Are you the students behind the Stories Beyond Appearances project?" called a woman holding a microphone. "We'd like to do a feature about your work." Nathan reread Lily's note nervously as he waited in the library, their agreed meeting spot. His fingers traced the looping handwriting. "My grandma said you are special. I think she's right. Can we talk tomorrow?" The message had been tucked into his notebook yesterday after the club meeting, and he'd barely slept thinking about it. When Lily appeared between the bookshelves, she seemed different, less polished, more authentic. Her usual posse of admirers was nowhere to be seen. "Hi," she said simply, sliding into the chair across from him. "Hi," Nathan echoed, unsure how to navigate this new dynamic between them. Lily fidgeted with her bracelet before speaking. "I've never questioned my grandmother's values before, you know." Her voice was quiet, almost confessional. "I always just assumed that the people she associated with were the people who mattered." "And now?" Nathan prompted. "Now I'm confused," she admitted. "Grandma came home after the gala and did something I've never seen before. She cried." Lily's eyes widened at the memory. She sat in her study looking at old photographs and just cried. When I asked her what was wrong, she said they weren't sad tears. They were for remembering a time when someone helped her see clearly for the first time. "Marta," Nathan said. Lily nodded. She talked about Marta for hours. About how, when my great-grandmother was dying, Marta was the only person who didn't treat my grandmother like she was special or different because of her family name. Their conversation continued as they left the library, and almost without planning it, they found themselves walking toward Marta's neighborhood. Nathan noticed Lily's obvious discomfort as they entered the less affluent area, her eyes darting nervously at the unfamiliar surroundings. "I've never been to this part of town," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just people living their lives," Nathan replied. "Different from your neighborhood, but not dangerous." When they arrived at Marta's modest house, the elderly woman's face lit up with recognition. "Ah, Eleanor's granddaughter," she exclaimed, studying Lily's face intently. "You have same eyes as your grandmother when young. Come in, come in." Lily seemed startled by the warm welcome and the immediate comparison to her grandmother's younger self. Inside, Marta had already prepared tea in mismatched cups and a plate of homemade cookies that filled the small living room with a comforting aroma. "My grandmother talks about you all the time now," Lily said once they were seated. "It's strange. I've known her my whole life, but I feel like I'm just learning who she really is." Marta smiled knowingly. "People have many layers like onion. Sometimes take whole lifetime to see all the layers." She disappeared briefly into her bedroom and returned with a faded photograph. "Look, your grandmother and me, first year we know each other." The image showed a young Eleanor Hammond in an immaculate volunteer uniform, standing stiffly beside Marta in her nurse's attire. The contrast between them was evident even then, one clearly from privilege, the other from simpler origins, but they were linked by the same volunteer badges. "She was so serious," Marta chuckled. "Always clipboard, always checking boxes. Very proper volunteer doing required community service hours." Lily leaned closer to the photo. "She looked so uncomfortable." "Of course. Hospital, not comfortable place. Sickness, death. These things scare privileged girl who never see such things." Marta's eyes twinkled with the memory. "But then her mother gets sick. Same cancer that take Nathan's mother years later. Suddenly Eleanor not volunteer anymore but family member of patient. Very different perspective." "That's when you became friends?" Nathan asked. "Not right away," Marta explained. "First, she very demanding. Want special room for mother, special doctor attention. I tell her, perhaps too directly, that in my ward all patients receive same care, whether they donate wing to hospital or clean hospital floors." Lily gasped. "You actually said that to my grandmother?" Someone needed to. Marta shrugged unapologetically. Her mother was dying. In such moments, wealth and status mean nothing. Eleanor needed to understand this to really help her mother through final journey. As the afternoon progressed, Marta shared more stories about her friendship with Eleanor Hammond, who later became Mrs. Blackwell. She showed them photographs of them volunteering together after Eleanor's mother passed away, explaining how the experience had transformed the wealthy young woman's approach to service. She come back to hospital not for school credit, but because something changed in her heart, Marta explained. She start to see people, really see them, beyond their appearance or position. At the next service club meeting, Nathan proposed that Marta share her experiences with the entire group. When she arrived the following week, several students seemed skeptical about what they could learn from someone so ordinary looking. Yet, within minutes of her beginning to speak, the room was captivated. In 42 years as nurse, I learned that kindness is universal language, she told them. Rich people, poor people, famous people, unknown people, all understand smile, gentle touch, respectful word. After her presentation, interest in serving seniors from all backgrounds increased dramatically. Lily, in particular, seemed transformed by what she'd heard. I think we should expand our outreach, she suggested during the planning session. Not just the luxury retirement communities, but the smaller senior centers, and even seniors living alone in different neighborhoods. Some of her usual friends looked surprised at this suggestion. Those places are so depressing, one girl whispered. And they probably don't have proper donor recognition programs. Lily straightened her shoulders. That's not the point of service, though, is it? We're not doing this to get our names on plaques. Nathan glanced at her with newfound respect. Something had genuinely shifted in Lily's perspective. That weekend, Mrs. Blackwell invited Nathan, his father, and Marta to her home for afternoon tea. The elegant mansion with its manicured gardens stood in stark contrast to Marta's modest dwelling. Yet when the two elderly women sat together on the terrace, they seemed perfectly at ease with each other. I've been thinking about our hospital days, Mrs. Blackwell remarked, pouring tea into fine china cups. Do you remember how furious I was when you wouldn't let me bring in that private duty nurse for Mother? Marta laughed. You threatened to have me fired, said your father on hospital board. I was an entitled brat, Mrs. Blackwell admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Thank goodness you stood your ground. What happened? Nathan's father asked, clearly fascinated by this glimpse into the past. Mrs. Blackwell's expression grew softer. My mother received the same care as every other patient on Marta's ward, which turned out to be exceptional care for everyone. No special treatment, just extraordinary compassion. She reached over to squeeze Marta's hand. It was Marta who first suggested I use my family's wealth for meaningful causes, rather than just social status. She quite literally changed the trajectory of my life. As they were leaving, Mrs. Blackwell pulled Nathan aside. Did you know I've been secretly having Marta observed? She asked. Every year, I ask different people to notice which students voluntarily help her without knowing our connection. Why? Nathan asked. Because character reveals itself in how we treat those from whom we can gain nothing, she replied simply. For years, Marta has been my litmus test for identifying young people with genuine compassion. The following day, during another club meeting, Lily and Nathan officially presented their expanded project, Stories Beyond Appearances. The initiative would document the life experiences of seniors from all backgrounds, creating an archive that would preserve their wisdom and challenges. My grandmother has offered to provide special funding through the Blackwell Foundation, Lily announced. She believes this project has the potential to bridge important divides in our community. Ms. Winters couldn't hide her enthusiasm. This is exactly the kind of initiative Mrs. Blackwell was hoping to inspire when she doubled her contribution. After the meeting, Nathan and Lily organized a site visit to compare the luxury retirement facility where Lily had previously volunteered with the modest senior center near Marta's neighborhood. The differences were striking, from the gourmet meals and art studios at Riverside Manor to the simple lunch program and worn furniture at Oakwood Senior Center. Yet as they interviewed seniors at both locations, they discovered equally rich life stories. A janitor who had secretly written poetry for 60 years, a former CEO who now found joy in teaching chess to children, a homemaker who had helped hide Jewish families during World War II, a businessman who had lost everything in the 2008 recession but found renewed purpose mentoring young entrepreneurs. As they walked home that evening, Lily seemed lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts?" Nathan prompted. "I've been raised to believe that importance comes from who you know, not what you do," she confessed, kicking at a pebble on the sidewalk. "My parents are always talking about the right schools, the right clubs, the right connections. They measure everything by how it will look on college applications or who might notice." "And now?" Nathan asked. Lily smiled thoughtfully. "Now I'm thinking about Marta. She doesn't have a big house or important friends, except my grandmother, I guess, but she seems so content. Like she's absolutely certain of her worth without needing anyone to confirm it." "That's what I'm learning from her too," Nathan agreed. "My mom was like that. She measured success by how she made people feel, not by what she achieved or accumulated." "I think I'd like to have been friends with your mother," Lily said softly. The next day, they gathered the first round of interviews and photographs for their project. The simple honesty of the seniors' stories was compelling, regardless of their backgrounds. Nathan and Lily edited the material together in the school's media lab, creating a preview presentation for the next club meeting. As they left the final club meeting of the week, focused intently on their discussion about the expanding project, they were caught off guard by the small group of reporters waiting at the school entrance. "Are you the students behind the Stories Beyond Appearances project?" called a woman holding a microphone. "We'd like to do a feature about your work." Nathan and Lily stood frozen before the reporters, cameras flashing in their direction. The sudden attention felt surreal after weeks of working quietly on their project. Nathan's first instinct was to retreat, but beside him, Lily straightened her posture, a gesture he'd come to recognize as her way of gathering courage. "Yes, that's us," she confirmed, stepping forward with unexpected confidence. "I'm Lily Blackwell, and this is Nathan Davis. We've been documenting the life stories of seniors in our community." The reporter extended her microphone toward them. "Can you tell us what inspired this project?" Nathan glanced at Lily, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, he found his voice. "It started with Marta Kozlov, a former nurse who took care of my mother before she passed away," he explained, surprised by his own steadiness. "She taught me that every person has value beyond their appearance or social status." "And my grandmother, Eleanor Blackwell, has been friends with Marta for decades," Lily added. "Their friendship across social boundaries inspired us to look deeper at the seniors in our community." As they continued the impromptu interview, Nathan felt a strange mix of nervousness and pride. They described their visits to both the luxury retirement community and the modest senior center, emphasizing how similar human experiences transcended these different settings. "We've found that whether someone was a CEO or a janitor, they all have wisdom to share," Lily explained. "Our project aims to preserve these stories before they're lost." By the time the reporters finished, a small crowd of students had gathered to watch. Some looked impressed, others curious, and a few, particularly those who had dismissed Nathan earlier in the year, seemed slightly envious of the attention. The next morning, Nathan came downstairs to find his father already at the kitchen table, the local newspaper spread before him. His dad looked up with an expression of surprise and pride. "You didn't tell me you were going to be a local celebrity," he said, turning the paper around. There on page 3 was a photograph of Nathan and Lily standing together outside the school, alongside the headline, Local Students Bridge Social Divides Through Seniors' Stories Project. The article praised their initiative and mentioned both Marta and Mrs. Blackwell as inspirations. "Dad, I had no idea they'd actually print it," Nathan said, scanning the article with wide eyes. "Do you think it's okay? They didn't make us sound like we're showing off, did they?" His father studied him for a moment. "You're really worried about that, aren't you? About people thinking you're doing this for attention?" Nathan nodded, the irony not lost on him. A few months ago, attention was exactly what he'd wanted. "The Nathan I see in this article isn't doing anything for show," his father assured him. "I'm proud of you, son." Later that morning, the phone rang. It was Marta, her voice more animated than usual. "Nathan, all my neighbors see newspaper. Mrs. Petrov from across street bring me 3 copies. Everyone's so proud that little Marta is part of important project." Her genuine excitement made Nathan smile. "It's your project too, Marta. You're the reason it exists." When Nathan arrived at school, he immediately felt the difference. Students who had barely acknowledged him in the hallways now stopped to ask about the project. Some seemed genuinely interested, while others clearly wanted to associate themselves with something that had received positive press. "I didn't know you were working directly with Mrs. Blackwell," said Jason Chen, who had been one of the top 3 volunteers. "You should have mentioned that earlier." During lunch, Nathan found a quiet moment alone in the courtyard. Sitting on a bench, he stared at his reflection in the window of the school building. Was he still that boy who had rushed to sign up for the service club, hoping to impress Lily and her grandmother? Was he now enjoying the attention for the right reasons? The doubt must have shown on his face because his father noticed it that evening as they prepared dinner together. "Something bothering you?" his dad asked, sliding chopped vegetables into a pan. Nathan hesitated. "How do you know if you're doing something for the right reasons? What if I'm still just looking for recognition, but in a different way?" His father set down his knife and turned to face him. "That's a pretty deep question for a Tuesday night." He wiped his hands on a dish towel, thinking, "Let me ask you this. Would you still be visiting Marta and interviewing those seniors if nobody ever wrote an article about it? If Mrs. Blackwell never acknowledged it?" The question hung in the air as Nathan considered it honestly. "Yes," he finally answered. "I would." "Then you're doing it for the right reasons, son." The following afternoon, a local television crew contacted them through Ms. Winters, requesting permission to film one of their interview sessions for an evening news segment. "This is incredible exposure for the club," Ms. Winters enthused. "They want to feature your visit to Oak Meadows Senior Center tomorrow." Nathan and Lily exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. Some of the seniors they'd interviewed were intensely private people. "We'd need to get everyone's permission first," Nathan stated firmly. "And if anyone doesn't want to be on camera, we respect that absolutely." Ms. Winters seemed surprised by his condition but agreed. The filming day arrived with unexpected complications. The television crew's bright lights and professional equipment created an intimidating atmosphere at the senior center. Mr. Collins, a retired postal worker who had shared beautiful stories about witnessing decades of community changes, became visibly uncomfortable when the cameras turned his direction. "I don't know about this," he whispered to Nathan. "I just wanted to talk to you kids, not be on television." Nathan immediately positioned himself between Mr. Collins and the camera. "It's completely your choice, sir. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." The producer frowned. "We really need more subjects for a complete segment." "Then we'll find volunteers who are comfortable being filmed," Nathan insisted. "But we won't pressure anyone." From across the room, he caught Mrs. Blackwell observing the interaction. She had arrived quietly during setup, standing in the background as the crew arranged their equipment. Now, she gave Nathan a subtle nod of approval, her eyes conveying clear appreciation for his prioritizing the seniors' comfort over media exposure. After the filming ended, some of Lily's former friends approached her in the parking lot. "Why are you spending so much time in these depressing places?" one girl asked, wrinkling her nose. "My mother says these neighborhoods aren't safe." Lily frowned. "These depressing places are where people live their lives, Claire. Real people with amazing stories." "But what about college applications?" another friend pressed. "Wouldn't volunteering at your grandmother's charity galas look better on your resume?" "Maybe," Lily conceded. "But that's not why I'm doing this anymore." As the project gained momentum, Nathan found himself noticing subtle changes in his own behavior and thoughts. The designer labels on classmates' clothing, once codes of status he'd envied, now seemed less significant. The stories behind the faces he encountered, however, had become infinitely more interesting. When Jason commented on Nathan's worn sneakers, implying he should upgrade now that he was connected to the Blackwell family, Nathan just laughed. "They still work fine," he replied, genuinely unbothered. "Besides, I'd rather spend money on recording equipment for the project." One afternoon, Mrs. Blackwell invited Nathan and Lily to her home to discuss expanding the Stories Beyond Appearances initiative to other schools in the district. "The foundation board was quite impressed with what you've accomplished," she explained, serving them tea in her sunlit conservatory. "They've suggested creating a grant program for similar projects elsewhere." As they discussed logistics, Nathan marveled at how comfortable he now felt in this elegant home. 3 months ago, he would have been paralyzed with anxiety about using the wrong fork or saying the wrong thing. Now he understood that Mrs. Blackwell valued substance over superficial polish. "Eleanor becoming soft in old age," Marta teased when Nathan told her about the expansion plans during his next visit. When young, she very serious about rules and proper behavior. Now she breaking traditions left and right. "Is that a bad thing?" Nathan asked, helping Marta water her window plants. "Is best thing," Marta replied with a smile. "Means she's still growing, still learning, even at 77 years. The positive coverage continued, with the television segment airing to favorable community response. More seniors contacted the school asking to participate, and several neighboring high schools expressed interest in starting similar programs. At the end of a particularly long day of interviews, Nathan received an unexpected phone call. The caller identified himself as Dr. Stephen Brenner from Westridge Medical College. "I saw your project featured in the news," the man explained. "We have a gerontology department here that might interest you and your partner." "Gerontology," Nathan repeated, unfamiliar with the term. "The study of aging and the elderly," Dr. Brenner clarified. "Our students and faculty were quite impressed with your approach to senior care and dignity. We'd like to invite you both to present your project to our first-year students. It might give them valuable perspective before they begin their clinical rotations." Nathan's hand tightened around the phone. "You want us to speak at a medical college?" "If you're willing. We believe medical students could benefit greatly from hearing about your experiences." After hanging up, Nathan sat on his bed for a long moment, staring at the wall. For the first time, he found himself thinking about his future beyond high school. Not just vague aspirations, but concrete possibilities he'd never considered before. At the end of a long day of interviews, Nathan received an unexpected phone call. A nearby medical college wanted him and Lily to present their project to students of gerontology. An opportunity that made him think, for the first time, about his own future beyond high school. Nathan and Lily stood nervously at the entrance of Westridge Medical College's main auditorium, both visibly impressed by the imposing academic environment. The high ceilings, polished wooden panels, and rows of seats filled with medical students created an atmosphere far removed from their high school classrooms. "I think I'm going to be sick," Nathan whispered, clutching his folder of presentation materials. "These are college students. Medical students." Lily adjusted her blazer, looking equally intimidated. "My knees are actually shaking. Is that normal?" Completely normal, came a friendly voice behind them. Dr. Stephen Brenner, the professor who had invited them, approached with a reassuring smile. Even seasoned professors get nervous before presenting. Just remember, you know your project better than anyone in this room. As they were led to the stage, Nathan scanned the audience of future doctors, feeling decidedly out of place. When Dr. Brenner introduced them, highlighting their innovative approach to bridging generational and socioeconomic divides, Nathan felt a momentary panic. The spotlight seemed suddenly too bright, the audience too large. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice initially unsteady. "My name is Nathan Davis, and this is Lily Blackwell. We're here to share our project called Stories Beyond Appearances." Nathan started by explaining how the project began, hesitantly at first, but growing more confident as he described his initial encounter with Marta. When he mentioned his mother's illness and Marta's role as her nurse, his voice grew stronger, fueled by personal connection rather than nervousness. "What we discovered," Lily continued seamlessly, "was that regardless of socioeconomic background, elderly individuals share common concerns about being forgotten, overlooked, or defined solely by their age rather than their life experiences." As they presented examples from their interviews, showing photographs and playing audio clips, Nathan noticed the medical students leaning forward, many taking notes. What had begun as an intimidating ordeal transformed into an engaging discussion, with students asking thoughtful questions about their methodology and findings. "One thing we've learned," Nathan explained in response to a question about communication barriers, "is that patience is essential. Many seniors have hearing difficulties or process information more slowly, but that doesn't mean they have nothing valuable to share. Often, they just need someone willing to listen attentively." A geriatric medicine professor raised her hand. "You've touched on something we emphasize heavily in our curriculum, the distinction between hearing and listening. Many healthcare providers hear their elderly patients but don't truly listen to them." After the presentation concluded, Dr. Brenner invited them on a tour of the campus. Nathan was fascinated by the anatomy labs, simulation rooms with lifelike medical mannequins, and the extensive medical library. Outside a classroom, they paused to watch students practicing patient interviews with actors portraying various conditions. "This is incredible," Nathan murmured, peering through the observation window. "They practice conversations before seeing real patients." "Communication is half of medicine," Dr. Brenner explained, "especially with elderly patients who often have complex medical histories and may struggle to articulate their symptoms." As they continued their tour, a young man in a white coat approached them. "Excuse me," he said, extending his hand to Nathan. "I'm Carlos Reyes, second-year student. I just wanted to tell you how much your presentation resonated with me." "Really?" Nathan asked, surprised by the earnest interaction. Carlos nodded. "My father died when I was 11. Cancer. I remember feeling so helpless during his treatment, watching doctors and nurses come and go. It made me want to become a doctor myself." "I lost my mom 3 years ago," Nathan replied, feeling an immediate connection. "That's part of why this project means so much to me." "You should consider medicine," Carlos suggested. "The profession needs people who understand loss from the family perspective." On the drive home, Lily noticed Nathan's thoughtful silence. "You haven't said much since we left the college. What's on your mind?" "Just thinking about the tour," Nathan replied, watching the landscape pass outside the car window. "Have you ever considered becoming a doctor?" Lily looked surprised. "Me? No. I always assumed I'd go into business or maybe law, like most of my family." "I never really thought about it before today," Nathan admitted. "But seeing those students learning about what they do, something just clicked." "You'd make a great doctor," Lily said without hesitation. "The way you connect with the seniors we interview, You have a natural compassion that can't be taught." The following afternoon, Nathan visited Marta and found her sitting in her armchair, looking noticeably tired. Her usual vibrant energy seemed dimmed, and she moved more slowly as she prepared their customary tea. "Are you feeling okay?" Nathan asked, concerned by her pallor. "Just little tired today," she insisted with a dismissive wave. "Old people get tired is normal." But Nathan noticed she winced slightly when reaching for the teacups and left her own untouched as they talked. Despite his gentle prodding, Marta refused to acknowledge feeling unwell, changing the subject to ask about the college presentation. 2 days later, when Marta canceled her participation in a scheduled project session due to being just a little indisposed, Nathan's concern deepened. It was the first time she had ever missed an opportunity to share her stories. "Dad, I'm worried about Marta," he confessed that evening. "She doesn't look well, but she won't admit it." His father frowned. "Your mother was the same way, always downplaying symptoms. Let's check on her tomorrow." When they arrived at Marta's house the next morning, they found her struggling to get out of bed, clearly in pain but still insisting she was just a little stiff today. Nathan's father took one look at her ashen face and called for an ambulance despite her protests. At the hospital, doctors discovered Marta needed gallbladder surgery, not immediately life-threatening, but serious enough to require prompt attention, especially at her age. As she was whisked away for tests, Nathan, his father Lily, and Mrs. Blackwell gathered anxiously in the waiting room. "She'll be fine," Mrs. Blackwell stated firmly, though her tightly clasped hands betrayed her concern. "Marta is stronger than all of us combined." The hours stretched interminably. To pass the time and distract themselves from worry, they shared stories about Marta. Nathan's father recounted how she had stayed past her shift countless times during his wife's illness, while Mrs. Blackwell revealed that Marta had refused any recognition at hospital fundraisers, despite Mrs. Blackwell's repeated attempts to honor her service. "She always said the same thing," Mrs. Blackwell recalled with a fond smile. "I do not need name on plaque to know my worth. She taught me that lesson when I was still young enough to learn it." "Is that why you became involved in philanthropy?" Lily asked her grandmother, clearly hearing this story for the first time. Mrs. Blackwell nodded. "Marta challenged me one day after I complained about a hospital fundraiser being tedious. She asked what purpose my family's wealth served if not to improve others' lives. It was quite confronting for a 20-something socialite to hear." Nathan listened, once again struck by the profound impact Marta had had on so many lives through simple, authentic interaction. Here in this sterile hospital waiting room sat a wealthy philanthropist, a factory worker, and 2 teenagers from different worlds, all united by their connection to one modest former nurse. When the surgeon finally appeared, his expression was reassuring. "The procedure went very well," he announced. "Ms. Kozlov should make a full recovery, though she'll need proper rest and care for a few weeks." The collective relief was palpable. As they were permitted to visit her in recovery, Nathan was struck by how small Marta looked in the hospital bed, temporarily stripped of her usual, vibrant energy. Yet even sedated, there was a resilience to her that reminded him of his mother's final days, a fundamental dignity that transcended physical weakness. Over the next few days, as Marta regained her strength, Nathan found himself organizing a recovery schedule with unexpected efficiency. He created a spreadsheet coordinating visits from service club members, ensuring Marta would have company and assistance during her convalescence. "You're quite the organizer," Ms. Winters commented, impressed by his initiative. "Healthcare administration might be in your future." But Nathan's thoughts were increasingly drawn toward direct patient care rather than administration. He found himself paying careful attention to the doctors and nurses who attended Marta, noting their communication styles and behaviors that seemed to comfort or distress her. Many of the service club members readily volunteered to help, even those who had previously seemed interested only in prestigious community service opportunities. Something about Marta's situation Her vulnerability, combined with her unmistakable dignity, touched even the most status-conscious students. A week after her surgery, Nathan spent a quiet afternoon in Marta's hospital room while she rested. He had brought one of her favorite books, reading aloud softly when she was awake and continuing to read silently when she dozed off. The rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft shuffling of hospital staff outside formed a backdrop that felt strangely familiar and right to Nathan. As he watched Marta sleep, he reflected on the intersection of their lives. 3 months ago, he had helped her with groceries only because he mistook her for someone important. Now he understood that she was truly one of the most important people he would ever meet, not because of status or connections, but because of the authentic way she had lived her life and touched others. Tomorrow, Marta would be discharged, ready to continue her recovery at home with the support system Nathan had organized. Everything was in place for her homecoming, from the freshly cleaned house, courtesy of the service club, to the meal train arranged for the coming weeks. As the afternoon shadows lengthened across the hospital room, a senior physician Nathan hadn't seen before entered quietly, checking Marta's chart. After examining her briefly, he stepped back and noticed Nathan. "You must be Nathan," he said with a smile. "Marta mentioned you when she was coming out of anesthesia. Said you were a good boy with healing hands." Nathan blushed slightly at the praise. "I'm just a friend." The doctor studied him thoughtfully. "I saw your project on connecting with elderly patients. Very impressive work for someone your age." He paused, seeming to make a decision. "We have a mentorship program for high school students interested in medicine. Would you consider participating?" Nathan accepted the mentorship invitation with a mixture of nervousness and excitement, his mind racing with possibilities he'd never previously considered. Dr. Kaplan, the senior physician who had approached him, had explained that the program would involve shadowing doctors, attending select lectures, and participating in discussions about medical ethics and patient care. "This is a serious commitment," his father said that evening, reviewing the program details. "Are you sure you can balance this with school and the seniors project?" "I think so," Nathan replied, though uncertainty flickered across his face. After seeing Marta in the hospital, something just clicked. "I want to learn more about medicine, about helping people when they're vulnerable." His father studied him thoughtfully. "You remind me of your mother sometimes. She had that same look when she found something that mattered to her." The following morning found Nathan, his father, and Mrs. Blackwell helping Marta settle back into her home after her hospital stay. The service club had cleaned her house thoroughly, and fresh flowers brightened every room. Mrs. Blackwell's contribution, though she'd tried to make them look casual rather than extravagant to suit Marta's tastes. "Too much fuss," Marta protested weakly as they arranged pillows behind her on the couch. "I'm not invalid." "You had surgery," Nathan's father reminded her gently. "Let us help you for once." "Young man, right," Mrs. Blackwell agreed, adjusting a blanket over Marta's legs. "You've spent decades caring for others. Now it's your turn to be cared for." Marta made a dismissive sound but couldn't hide her pleased expression at being surrounded by people who cared about her. That evening, Nathan attended his first session at Westridge Medical College. He sat nervously in the back row of a lecture hall, feeling out of place among college students as a professor discussed cellular biology concepts that stretched the limits of his high school science knowledge. He scribbled frantically in his notebook, trying to capture unfamiliar terms like mitochondrial respiration and endoplasmic reticulum. At one point, the student next to him, a young woman with a neatly organized tablet, noticed his struggle and quietly angled her screen so he could see her clearly labeled diagrams. "First-year concepts are like learning a new language," she whispered sympathetically. "It gets easier." Over the following weeks, Nathan's schedule became increasingly packed. School in the mornings, the seniors project in the afternoons, and the mentorship program several evenings a week left little time for anything else. He carried flashcards everywhere, studying medical terminology during lunch breaks and bus rides. One Thursday afternoon, he nearly fell asleep during an interview with Mr. Garcia, an 80-year-old former construction worker sharing stories about building the city's landmark bridge. "Maybe we should reschedule," Lily suggested, noticing Nathan's exhaustion. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "I'm fine," Nathan insisted, though the dark circles under his eyes suggested otherwise. "Just stayed up late studying anatomy." Later that week, Lily approached him with unusual hesitation during lunch. "Can we talk? About the future, I mean." They found a quiet corner of the school courtyard, away from the usual lunchtime chaos. Lily seemed uncharacteristically unsure of herself, picking at the edge of her sandwich before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do after graduation," she began. "Before our project, I always assumed I'd follow my family's path. Business school, then taking a position in one of my parents' companies or working with Grandma's foundation." "That makes sense," Nathan replied, curious about her evident uncertainty. "But now," Lily hesitated, "I've been talking with Grandma about different paths. She thinks I might be suited for philanthropic work, not just donating money, but actually developing programs that make a difference." "That sounds perfect for you," Nathan said sincerely. "You're amazing at organizing the project and seeing the big picture." Lily smiled, relief evident in her expression. "What about you? Is medicine really what you want now?" Nathan considered the question seriously. "I think so. Being in the hospital with Marta, watching how the doctors and nurses interacted with her, it felt right somehow, like I could see myself doing that work." Their conversation continued, exploring dreams and possibilities neither had articulated before their lives intersected through the service project. As they walked back to class, their hands occasionally brushed against each other, neither pulling away at the contact. The following weekend, despite her family's concerns about overexertion, Marta insisted on returning to participate in the seniors project. "Doctors say I need to walk, to keep active," she argued when Nathan expressed concern. "Sitting with young people, sharing stories. This is good medicine for old lady." Her first session back was a special gathering where she and Mrs. Blackwell co-presented their intertwined life stories. Students and seniors alike listened, fascinated, as the two elderly women recounted their unlikely friendship, one from wealth and privilege, the other an immigrant who had worked since childhood. "Eleanor thinks she come to hospital as volunteer to help poor sick people," Marta recalled with mischievous humor. "Instead, she learned more from patients than she teach." "Marta had the audacity to tell me, the daughter of the hospital's biggest donor, that I was doing everything wrong," Mrs. Blackwell added, her elegant demeanor briefly giving way to laughter. And she was absolutely right. The event concluded with an announcement about the expansion of the Stories Beyond Appearances project to neighboring schools, with funding secured through the Blackwell Foundation. Nathan and Lily would serve as program advisors, training other students to conduct similar oral history projects. After one particularly intense mentorship session at the medical college, where Nathan had observed doctors interacting with elderly patients, Dr. Kaplan pulled him aside. "You have a natural way with the older patients," he noted. "Many medical students struggle with that demographic. They speak too loudly or too quickly or use too much jargon, but you adjust instinctively." "I learned from Marta," Nathan explained. "She taught me to listen, not just hear." "Hold on to that skill," Dr. Kaplan advised. "The best technical knowledge in the world can't replace genuine connection with patients." As spring approached, preparations began for the year-end showcase of the Stories Beyond Appearances project. The event would feature video installations, photography exhibits, and live presentations highlighting the collected oral histories from seniors across the community. Nathan discovered his father had requested a day off work to attend, something he had never done for school events before. "It's important," his father said simply when Nathan expressed surprise. "What you've created matters." One mild afternoon, Nathan and Lily walked through the park after finalizing details for the showcase. The comfortable silence between them felt significant, their hands occasionally touching as they strolled along the path. Neither commented on these brief contacts, but both seemed increasingly aware of the subtle shift in their relationship. "Do you ever think about how differently this year could have gone?" Lily asked as they paused to watch ducks on the small pond. "All the time," Nathan admitted. "If I hadn't mistaken Marta for your grandmother that day in the supermarket, if I hadn't been so focused on impressing the right people." Their fingers intertwined more deliberately this time, both acknowledging without words the connection that had grown between them. One evening, while Nathan helped Marta water her many houseplants, she began teaching him words in her native language, simple phrases about healing and compassion that she had carried with her from her homeland. "This one mean gentle hands," she explained, demonstrating the proper pronunciation. "Nurses must have gentle hands, gentle voice, but strong heart." Nathan repeated the phrase carefully, connecting it to his growing interest in medicine. "Did you ever regret not becoming a doctor?" he asked. Marta considered this thoughtfully. "For a short time, yes. But then I realized nurse spend more time with patients, know them better. Doctor visit few minutes, nurse there through long nights, difficult days, both important but different." At the next foundation meeting, Mrs. Blackwell made a surprising announcement. "The board has approved creating a nursing scholarship in Marta Kozlov's name," she informed Nathan and Lily. "It will support students pursuing geriatric nursing, particularly those from immigrant backgrounds." "That's wonderful," Lily exclaimed. "Does Marta know?" "Not yet," her grandmother replied with a smile. "I wanted to surprise her at the showcase." As the end-of-year showcase approached, Nathan found himself writing and rewriting his speech for the opening ceremony. Nothing seemed adequate to capture the transformation he had experienced since that day in the supermarket when he had reluctantly offered to help an elderly woman with her groceries. The night before the event, he sat at his desk surrounded by crumpled paper, still struggling to find the right words. His father knocked softly before entering with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Still working on that speech?" Nathan nodded, frustration evident in his expression. "I can't get it right. How do I explain everything that's happened? Everything I've learned?" His father sat on the edge of the bed, passing one of the mugs to Nathan. "You know, your mother used to say that when words fail, the truth is usually simple." He reached for a photo frame on Nathan's desk, the one containing a picture of his late wife. "She would be so proud of you, Nathan, not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you're becoming." Nathan studied the familiar photograph, seeing his mother's smile with new appreciation. "I wish she could be there tomorrow." "In many ways, she will be," his father replied softly. "Every time you show compassion, every time you look beyond appearances to see someone's true value, that's her legacy, living through you." The morning of the big event, Nathan received a small wrapped box from Marta with a note. "For you to wear today and on all important days of your life." Opening it, he found an antique wristwatch that had belonged to her late husband. Nathan held Marta's husband's watch in his hands, feeling its weight and significance. The antique timepiece was simple yet elegant, a silver case with a leather band worn smooth by years of use. His hands trembled slightly as he fastened it around his wrist, understanding this wasn't just a loan, but a profound gift connecting generations. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty room, knowing Marta couldn't hear him, but feeling the need to express his gratitude nonetheless. The school auditorium was transformed for the Stories Beyond Appearances showcase. Photography displays lined the walls, portraits of seniors paired with childhood photos, bridging decades in a single glance. Video stations featured recorded interviews playing on a loop, while in the center of the room, an interactive timeline chronicled the collective history of their community through personal stories. The first row of seats was reserved exclusively for the elderly participants of the project. Nathan watched as they arrived, some with family members, others with caregivers, each greeted personally by student volunteers. Mr. Garcia, the former construction worker, proudly wore his original hard hat. Mrs. Abernathy, once a civil rights activist, arrived in her Sunday best, complete with an elegant hat. And there was Marta, seated beside Mrs. Blackwell, the visual contrast between them as striking as ever yet, somehow less significant now that everyone knew the depth of their friendship. Backstage, Nathan paced nervously, occasionally touching Marta's watch for reassurance. His father appeared, offering a supportive hand on his shoulder. "Deep breaths," he advised. "You've got this." Lily joined them, elegant in a simple blue dress. "Everyone's here," she reported. "The mayor, the school board, even reporters from the state newspaper." "Not helping with the nerves, Lily," Nathan said with a weak smile. She squeezed his hand. "Just be yourself. That's who they're all here to see, the real you." The principal's introduction seemed to pass in a blur, and suddenly Nathan found himself walking to the podium. The lights felt too bright, the audience too large. But as he adjusted the microphone, his eyes found Marta in the front row. She nodded encouragingly, her faith in him unwavering. 10 months ago, Nathan began, his voice initially shaky but gaining strength. "I joined the community service club for all the wrong reasons. I wanted recognition. I wanted to impress people I thought were important. And when I first offered to help an elderly woman with her groceries, I did it hoping she was someone influential." The audience was silent, attentive to his candor. "That woman was Marta Kozlov," he continued, gesturing toward her. "And my disappointment when I realized she wasn't who I expected. That was my first lesson in looking beyond appearances." As Nathan recounted his journey, from reluctant helper to genuine friend, from status seeker to compassionate listener, the initial nervousness faded. He described how assumptions had limited his vision, preventing him from seeing the extraordinary value in seemingly ordinary lives. "We created this project to preserve the stories of seniors in our community," he explained, "but what we received in return was far greater. Wisdom, perspective, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters." The documentary created by the students played next, showcasing the intertwined histories of community members from vastly different backgrounds. Laughter rippled through the audience during amusing anecdotes, and tissues appeared during poignant moments. Like when Mr. Collins, the shy retired postal worker, described delivering letters during wartime, knowing each envelope might contain life-changing news. When Nathan returned to the podium, he couldn't resist sharing one particular revelation. "I have to admit something that seems funny now," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I initially joined this club hoping to impress Lily Blackwell and her grandmother. This earned knowing chuckles from his classmates. I even practiced a charming smile in the mirror before helping with groceries, thinking I'd be assisting Mrs. Blackwell instead of Marta." The audience laughed, including Mrs. Blackwell, who pretended to look offended before breaking into a smile herself. "The irony, which I only learned later," Nathan continued, "was that Mrs. Blackwell values nothing more highly than genuine service, a lesson she herself learned from Marta decades ago." When it came time for the formal announcement, Mrs. Blackwell rose gracefully to join Nathan at the podium. "The Blackwell Foundation is proud to announce the establishment of the Marta Kozlov Nursing Scholarship," she declared, "dedicated to supporting students pursuing geriatric nursing with preference given to first-generation Americans, honoring Marta's journey as an immigrant who dedicated her life to caring for others." The surprised gasps and applause from the audience were nothing compared to Marta's expression. a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and deep emotion. She shook her head in protest even as Mrs. Blackwell extended a hand, inviting her to the stage. "No, no, Eleanor," they could hear her objecting. "No need for such big fuss. For once in your life, accept recognition for the difference you've made," Mrs. Blackwell insisted, still holding out her hand. When Marta finally joined them on stage, the applause was thunderous. 3 generations of community members, from elementary school children to seniors in their 90s, stood in appreciation of a woman whose quiet service had touched countless lives. After the formal presentations concluded, the showcase transitioned into a celebration. The school cafeteria had been transformed with twinkling lights and round tables where seniors sat intermingled with students and community members. Barriers of age and background temporarily dissolved. Mrs. Blackwell hosted an elegant reception at her home afterward, bringing together people who would never normally share the same social space. Nathan observed with satisfaction as his father engaged in animated conversation with the mayor about community infrastructure, while Marta held court among a group of impressed medical students who had attended the showcase. "Look at this," Lily said, appearing at Nathan's side with a plate of hors d'oeuvres. "My grandmother's house has never had such a diverse group of guests. There's the superintendent talking to Mr. Collins about postal service budget cuts, and over there, is that your math teacher discussing quilting patterns with Mrs. Abernathy?" Nathan nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment that transcended any recognition he might have received. This is what it was all about, wasn't it? Not certificates or awards, but bringing people together who wouldn't otherwise connect. "Speaking of connecting," Lily said softly, "I saved you some of those little crab things you like. They were going fast." The simple thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering his preference amid all the evening's excitement, touched Nathan deeply. Time dissolved the evening into memory, and soon days became weeks. Weeks became months, and months accumulated into years. The Stories Beyond Appearances project continued to expand, eventually spanning schools across 3 counties, with Nathan and Lily returning occasionally as guest speakers even after graduation. Nathan's college dorm room was sparsely decorated except for one wall, which held a carefully curated collection of photographs. Among diplomas and academic awards hung a picture that held central importance. A 12-year-old boy in a blue vest, standing between 2 elderly women, one elegantly dressed, the other wearing a simple gray headscarf. 4 years of undergraduate studies had passed in a blur of challenging courses, late-night study sessions, and volunteer work at the university hospital's geriatric ward. Now, as Nathan prepared for his medical school graduation ceremony, he paused to straighten his tie in the mirror. The familiar weight of Marta's husband's watch still on his wrist, a constant reminder of where his journey had begun. "You ready?" his father asked, appearing in the doorway, older now, but standing taller than he had in the years following Nathan's mother's death. "Almost," Nathan replied, making one final adjustment to his graduation cap. In the ceremony hall, he scanned the audience until he found them, his father, beaming with pride, and beside him Marta. Her hair was completely white now, her face more lined, but her eyes still held that same gentle wisdom that had first reminded Nathan of his mother years before. When his name was called, Nathan walked across the stage with measured steps, accepting his medical school diploma with a firm handshake. At the microphone, he cleared his throat. "I dedicate this achievement to the memory of my mother, Sarah, and to Marta Kozlov, who taught me that the most meaningful acts are those done without expecting anything in return." The applause was warm, punctuated by his father's distinctive whistle and Marta's enthusiastic clapping. At the celebration dinner afterward, surrounded by classmates and professors, Nathan found himself engaged in conversation with Dr. Mercer, his favorite instructor. "So, Nathan," the older man asked, refilling his water glass, "what inspired you to pursue medicine?" You've shown such natural aptitude, particularly with geriatric patients. I've always wondered what drew you to this path." Nathan smiled, his fingers automatically touching Marta's watch on his wrist. He thought about the boy he had been, rushing to sign up for a service club for all the wrong reasons, calculating the value of helping others based on what he might gain in return. He remembered his initial disappointment upon discovering Marta wasn't the influential Mrs. Blackwell, and how that misconception had ultimately led him to his true calling. "I learned early on that sometimes you need to look beyond the blue vest to find someone's true value, especially your own." As the dinner concluded, Nathan received a phone call from the hospital where he would begin his residency. There was an unexpected opening in the geriatrics department, and his name had been the first to come to mind, thanks to a special recommendation from a certain Mrs. Eleanor Blackwell,